I woke up in a hospital bed with amnesia. I remembered everyone except Ethan Hayes, the man I desperately chased for 5 years. But Ethan was never good to me. All his tenderness belonged to his first love, his ultimate obsession. Even when I tumbled down the stairs and knocked myself unconscious, his only concern was whether she had gotten a scratch. Everyone used to say I loved Ethan so much that I threw my dignity into the dirt. What a joke. Now, I don't even remember who Ethan Hayes is. If he wants to be cold and distant, fine. I'm done chasing him. But later, Ethan grabbed my arm so tight, his knuckles turned white. With bloodshot eyes he begged me, Chloe, please, I beg you to remember. Once you remember, you can love me again. Chloe, are you seriously faking this? Or is this just your new tactic to get Ethan's attention? Harper tilted her head, utterly confused. She couldn't understand why I remembered everyone else but forgot Ethan Hayes, the man I used to love more than life itself. But hearing that name now, my mind was a complete blank. I blinked blankly and asked, who is Ethan? Harper was completely stunned. She quickly grabbed my phone from the nightstand and thrust it into my hands. Ethan Hayes, look, your lock screen is a photo of him and your password is his birthday. Ever since you fell head over heels for him at a gala 5 years ago, you've been obsessed. You chased him like crazy for 5 whole years. You even gave up your dream admission to the Parsons School of Design just to work a grueling corporate finance job at his company. Harper spoke with intense passion, but as my eyes fell on the photo on the screen, I felt nothing. No butterfly in my stomach. No warmth, just complete detachment. So did we get together? My question made Harper choke on her words. She shook her head, looking at me with pity. No, Ethan. He actually disliked you a lot. He has this first love, Veronica, whom he could never forget. You fell down the stairs because you got into a fight with her right after she came back to the country. Ethan lost his temper and pushed you. It was an accident, but still. As Harper spoke, a strange residual muscle memory flared up in my body. My nose stung and a dull, aching pain throbbed in my chest. I looked down at the man on my lock screen. It was clearly a candid photo. The way he looked at the camera was filled with annoyance and disgust. Made me want to cry for the girl I used to be. I took a deep breath, swiped my phone and changed both the lock screen and the password. Chloe, what are you? Since 5 years of chasing got me nothing. Maybe forgetting is a blessing for both of us. I won't have to suffer anymore, and he can finally be free. I patted Harper's hand to reassure her. Then I deleted every single trace of Ethan Hayes from my phone, including his contact info. Harper sniffled suddenly, throwing her arms around me. Good. You should have done this a long time ago. He's not the only guy in the world. You're beautiful and kind, Chloe. You can have anyone you want. Why the hell did you suffer in that toxic finance department, working overnight every day? Ethan has terrible taste anyway, choosing to love that fake green tea. Beach Veronica. Harper got more worked up by the second, ready to curse Ethan for another 300 rounds. Just then, nurse knocked on the door and called her out. Chloe, hang out for a bit. I'll be right back. I smiled and nodded, picking up a fashion design magazine to pass the time. I was completely absorbed in it when the ward door was pushed open. I looked up. Mr. Hayes. Ethan Hayes frowned when he heard my formal cold greeting. He looked at me with deep suspicion and guardedness, clearly thinking this was another one of my games. He kept his chin high, his posture arrogant. The stairs incident. I admit I have some responsibility. I'm here to apologize. I've already wired $10 million to your account. If you have any other demands, as long as they aren't ridiculous, I can meet them. But if you're trying to use this accident to force me to be with you, let me tell you right now, that is absolutely. I put down the magazine, sat up and cut him off. Mr. Hayes, that won't be necessary. You're Harper's uncle, and what happened was just an accident. You've paid the compensation, and you've delivered your apology. Let's just call it even. Nathan stared at me, his eyes widening slightly. It was as if he thought I had lost my mind. He had come here prepared for me to cry, scream, and hold on to his coat, and now I was just letting it go. If you don't have any other demands, I'm leaving. I nodded, offering him a polite, professional smile. Thank you for visiting, Mr. Hayes. Have a safe trip back. Ethan purposely slowed his steps. Right before he stepped out of the ward, he finally heard my voice. Wait, Mr. Hayes. The tight frown on Ethan's face instantly relaxed. When he turned back, his expression was already replaced by his usual impatience. Chloe, I knew you couldn't resist. Tell me, what do you want? I tilted my head, looking completely puzzled by his sudden outburst of anger. I'm sorry, but could you please close the door on your way out? Ethan choked on his breath, his face turning red and then pale. He never expected that. The only reason I called him back was to ask him to shut the door. It was as if he was humiliated by the realization that he was actually expecting me to ask him for something. Ethan slammed the door shut with a deafening bang. Ethan, you came to see Chloe too. The doctor said she's recovering well, but her Before Harper could finish her sentence, Ethan gave her a cold, dismissive glance and swept past her. Harper rolled her eyes, pushed the door open, and walked in. She complained to me. Thank God you don't like him anymore. What an arrogant prick. Did he bully you? Just now? He hasn't given you a single good look in 5 years. He even dumped you in the most brutal investment department to make things hard for you. I was so sick of his behavior. Since we were on the topic, I took the opportunity to say, I want to resign. To be honest, since I woke up, I've looked over my current job, and I really don't like it. Probably only did it because of Ethan, but now I want to chase my own dream. I waved the fashion magazine in my hand toward Harper, the Royal College of Art. My application was accepted. In 2 weeks, I'm moving to London. Harper froze, clearly shocked by my sudden decision. So sudden? Why didn't you tell me earlier? I offered a bitter smile, not wanting to hide anything from her. Just decided when I saw him earlier. My heart still ached for some reason, but I can see he doesn't love me at all. His voice was filled with disgust and his face was so cold. Harper quickly tried to comfort me. No, Ethan actually cares about you. Don't make a rash decision. Otherwise he wouldn't have rushed over to see you. Back then, all those finance study materials I gave you, he actually compiled them for you himself. And last time I shook my head, my eyes calm and clear. Harper, it doesn't matter. Don't love him anymore. Harper was stunned into silence. Yes, the Chloe who loved Ethan Hayes to death had already died when he pushed her down those stairs. But the day before my discharge, an unexpected guest arrived in my ward, wearing a sweet, gentle smile. Recognized her from Harper's description. Ethan's first love, Veronica. I heard you have amnesia. Was a bit taken aback because of Ethan. My relationship with Veronica was bound to be terrible. I didn't expect her to visit me. Seeing that, I didn't reply. Veronica wasn't angry. She sat right beside my bed and started bragging. Sorry, I didn't give you a heads up. Ethan is just too protective of me. My stomach was feeling a bit off and he was so worried. He literally confiscated my phone and forced me to take a nap. He only just left because of an urgent company matter. So I finally found time to see you. I nodded, my voice flat. Thank you for coming since you're sick. You should rest more. Veronica froze for a second. Then her smile grew even wider, dripping with venom. So you really did lose your memory. I heard that during the 5 years I was gone, you clung to Ethan like a desperate dog. But even if you don't remember, I'm sure Harper told you how much he loves me. Really want to get back together with Ethan, but because you fell down the stairs, he has this lingering guilt. It's holding him back. She tilted her head, the sweet smile vanishing to reveal pure raw malice. So I need you to disappear from Ethan's sight. You pathetic loser. Before I could even speak, Veronica's eyes welled up and massive tears began to roll down her cheeks as she sobbed into her hands. Before I could figure out what game she was playing, Ethan burst through the door with bird force. The moment he saw Veronica crying, he turned on me like a savage animal. Chloe, what the hell is wrong with you? Veronica came here out of the goodness of her heart, and you have the nerve to bully her. I've told you 1,000 times. Veronica is my life. She's the only woman I will ever love. I actually thought you were behaving lately with your cold act. Didn't realize your tactics had just gotten dirtier. I kept my composure and explained I didn't say a thing. Veronica came into my room and insulted me under the guise of visiting. There's the security camera right there. Just pull the footage. Veronica's eyes flickered and she immediately sobbed. Ethan, please. She's still a wealthy Aries. My family is ruined now. I can't afford to offend her. If she says I insulted her, then I did. Miss Chloe, I apologize to you. I'll bow to you. Just please don't be mad. Nathan already loathed me for using my family's influence to chase him. Seeing Veronica humiliate herself like this made him lose all rationality. He pulled Veronica into his arms, cooing softly, "Veronica, you're just too kind." He then glared at me. "Last time she almost got physically violent with you. Thank God I got there in time. I thought falling down the stairs would teach you a lesson, but you're still as vicious as ever." He spat out his warning. "Chloe, for the sake of your recovery, apologize to Veronica right now and I'll let this go." I was shaking with anger. "I will not apologize. Why should I apologize for something I didn't do? Ethan Hayes? I said I didn't do it. If you don't believe me, check the security cameras." Nathan sneered, completely ignoring my words. He turned to the bodyguard standing behind him. "Check the cameras. Do you think Veronica would lie to me? Since you refuse to apologize on your own, I'll have to have someone teach you some manners." I had barely recovered from my head injury, and my physical strength was no match for professional bodyguards. Within seconds they pinned my arms back. The brute force bruised my shoulders, instantly making me gasp in pain. Under Ethan's cold command, the bodyguards violently dragged me out of bed. They forced my head down, trying to make me bow to Veronica. I was already suffering from a concussion and prone to dizziness. After being violently wrestled like this, my vision went black. My head slammed hard against the metal edge of the hospital bed. Warm blood immediately gushed down my forehead, blinding me. The pain was excruciating. "Leave her. She's just playing victim again today. She needs to learn her lesson." Blood blurred. My eyes weakened. Dizzy, I collapsed to my knees on the cold floor. The bodyguards kept pressing my head down, forcing me to bow to Veronica. My forehead hit the hard floor repeatedly. Ethan stood there watching it all with absolute indifference. It hurt so much. My head felt like it was being shattered by a sledgehammer. My entire body began to convulse with pain. Eventually, I lost the strength to struggle and slipped into complete darkness. The last thing I saw through the blood was Ethan gently wrapping his coat around Veronica, whispering sweet words as he let her out. Veronica looked back at me, sprawled miserably on the floor, her face twisted in a triumphant grin. Clinging to Ethan, she silently mouthed to me. The world did not end with a dramatic clash of thunder. It ended with a metallic tang of blood in my mouth and the cold, unyielding press of linoleum against my cheek. When the ward door finally slammed shut, taking Ethan and Veronica's fading laughter with it, the room fell into a terrifying silence. The bodyguards, realizing they had gone too far when they saw the dark crimson pool spreading beneath my head, hastily released their grip and fled like rats from a sinking ship. 10 minutes later, Harper walked in. The scream that tore from her throat shook the entire floor. "Chloe!" What followed was a blur of flashing red emergency lights, shouting doctors, and the frantic clatter of a gurney. But this time my body refused to let me drift into sweet unconsciousness. Through the haze of blinding pain and the sharp sting of stitches being pulled through my forehead, my mind did something terrifying. It unlocked the trauma. The second blow to my skull triggered a violent surge of blood to the damaged nerves of my brain. The floodgates broke. 5 years of memories came crashing back like a tidal wave of acid. I remembered every single humiliation. I remembered sitting alone in my apartment on my birthday, staring at a cold dinner while Ethan was across town, buying a $10 million ruby necklace for Veronica at an auction. Remembered working 36 hours straight in his investment department, fixing a multi-billion-dollar accounting error his incompetent executives had made, only for him to toss the file in my face and ask why I was always seeking attention. I remembered the stairs. I remembered Veronica standing on the top landing, smiling viciously as she whispered, "He never loved you, Chloe. You're just a dog," holding his slippers. And when I tried to walk away, Ethan had grabbed my arm, shoved me back in a fit of rage because Veronica let out a fake squeal, and watched me tumble down 15 marble steps. The tears that spilled from my eyes onto the hospital sheet weren't from the physical pain. They were tears of pure, burning rage at the pathetic girl I had been. "Chloe, oh God, Chloe." Harper was kneeling by my bed, her eyes swollen and bloodshot. She had been crying for hours. "The doctor said you have a severe concussion and 8 stitches. I called your brother. He's on his way back from New York." My voice was raspy, barely a breath. "Harper, I'm here. I'm right here." I turned my head slowly, looking at her through my bandaged eyes. "Where is the security footage from the hallway?" Harper stiffened, her face hardening into an expression of sheer hatred. "I pulled it myself before Ethan's men could wipe the hospital servers. I saw what he did to you, Chloe. I saw him let those men hold you down. Good. I whispered, a cold, icy calm settling over my chest. Send a copy to my brother's legal team. And Harper book my flight to London for tomorrow night. Tomorrow. But your head. I am not spending another minute breathing the same air as Ethan Hayes. The Vance family was not a family to be trampled on. While Ethan Hayes ruled the tech and finance sectors, my elder brother Julian Vance controlled the international shipping lanes and real estate empires of the East Coast. The only reason Ethan had been allowed to treat me like dirt for 5 years was because I had begged my family to stay out of it. I had threatened to cut ties with my own brother if he touched a single hair on Ethan's head. What a pathetic fool I had been. At 4 a.m., the heavy oak doors of my private hospital suite were pushed open. Julian walked in. He wore a dark charcoal suit, his coat damp from the rain. Outside, behind him stood 6 top-tier corporate attorneys and the chief of police. Julian didn't say a word at first. He walked to the side of my bed, his jaw clenched so tight the muscles in his neck strained. His eyes fell on the white bandage wrapped around my forehead and the deep purple bruises ringed around my wrists where Ethan's bodyguards had pinned me. Julian, I said softly. My brother bent down, pressing his forehead against my gloved hand. His voice shook with a lethal suppressed fury. I'm going to destroy him, Chloe. I'm going to wipe the Hayes group off the face of this continent. Not yet, I murmured, staring at the rain streaking down the window. A quick death is too merciful for a man as arrogant as Ethan. Let him think he won. Let him think I fled like a beaten dog. I looked up at my brother, my eyes completely clear, stripped of every trace of the pathetic obsession that had consumed me for half a decade. Pull all Vance family capital from his offshore investment funds quietly. Cancel the port expansion contract we granted his uncle. Do it subtly over the next 6 months. Let the cracks form slowly before the building collapses. Julian looked at me, a flash of surprise giving way to a dark, proud smile. And you. I'm going to London, I said flatly. I'm going to live the life I threw away for a ghost. At 8 p.m. the following evening, a private medical jet lifted off from the tarmac, cutting through the heavy rain. I looked out the oval window as the city lights shrank into tiny dots below. In his penthouse downtown, Ethan was probably pouring champagne for Veronica, celebrating the fact that the annoying, desperate Chloe had finally been put in her place. He probably thought I was sitting in my apartment weeping, waiting for him to send another cold financial settlement to buy my silence. He had no idea that the girl who loved him had died on that cold hospital floor, and the woman returning to claim her life owed him no mercy. 3 months after my departure, the Hayes Group headquarters in Central City was in a state of quiet panic. Ethan sat in his corner office on the 60th floor, staring at a stack of quarterly financial reports. His brow was furrowed into deep, permanent lines. What do you mean the European acquisitions deal fell through? Ethan's voice echoed coldly across the glass table. The Vance Shipping Corporation was supposed to guarantee our logistics line. His vice president of operations wiped sweat from his collar. Mr. Hayes, Vance Shipping pulled their guarantee 2 weeks ago. They cited a routine restructuring of global partnerships. And it's not just them. Speak, Ethan ordered, his tone dangerous. The internal audit team found a massive discrepancy in the Q3 projections. For the past 4 years our algorithmic risk models were flawless. But over the last quarter, 3 of our primary hedge funds suffered 20% losses. Ethan slammed his pen onto the mahogany desk. Where is the senior analyst who handled those risk models? Fire him. The vice president swallowed hard, looking terrified. Mr. Hayes, there was no senior analyst. Ethan froze. What? The risk models for the last 4 years. They weren't created by the finance department, the executive stammered, looking down at his tablet. They were submitted manually every Sunday night from a private IP address. We checked the system logs last week when the models started failing. The VP looked up, his voice barely audible. The files were uploaded from Miss Chloe Vance's personal laptop. The room went dead silent. Ethan sat immobile in his leather chair. His heart gave a strange, violent thud against his ribs. Chloe? That's impossible, Ethan sneered, though his fingers tightened around the edge of his desk. Chloe knew nothing about corporate risk architecture. She was just a junior staffer who took coffee orders and handled basic data entries. No, sir, the VP whispered, sliding a thick blue folder across the table. These are the original handwritten mathematical proofs for our firm's core trading algorithm. They were found in the archive safe. Look at the handwriting. Ethan snatched the folder, pulling it open. There, across hundreds of pages of dense, complex quantitative calculus, was a neat, fluid script he recognized instantly. At the bottom of the final page, dated 5 years ago, the very week I had given up my acceptance to the Parsons School of Design, was a tiny light note written, in blue ink. For Ethan. So his company never has to worry about the market storm. Ethan's breath hitched in his throat. The paper seemed to burn his fingertips. 5 years. For 5 whole years, he had assumed his firm's legendary risk mitigation was the work of high-priced Wall Street consultants he had hired. He had assumed Chloe was just a useless, needy heiress who used her family's name to occupy a desk in his office so she could stare at him during meetings. He had shoved her into the most stressful high-pressure department in the company to punish her for her persistence. And while he insulted her while he berated her, she had quietly sat at her desk every night, building the very financial armor that made him a billionaire. Where is she? Ethan's voice was suddenly raspy, his arrogant composure cracking for the first time in his life. Where is Chloe? She resigned 3 months ago, Mr. Hayes. The day after she left the hospital. Call her, Ethan ordered, his eyes turning bloodshot as he pulled out his phone. Tell her to come to my office. Immediately. Sir. Miss Vance blocked all Hayes Group corporate communications, the VP muttered. And she's no longer in the country. Just then the office door was pushed open. Veronica walked in, wearing a pastel pink Chanel dress, holding a designer handbag. She smiled sweetly, completely oblivious to the suffocating atmosphere in the room. Ethan, darling, Veronica cooed, walking over to wrap her arms around his neck. My stomach is feeling a bit sensitive again. Can you have your driver take me to that private spa downtown? And I saw this diamond bracelet at the boutique. Ethan looked at Veronica. For the first time in 5 years, looking at her soft, helpless smile didn't spark that old protective obsession in his chest. Instead, as his eyes fell on her face, he suddenly remembered the image of Chloe lying on the hospital floor, blood streaming down her forehead, while Veronica stood beside him, smirking. A wave of unexplained, icy nausea washed over him. He pulled her hands off his shoulders. Not today, Veronica. I'm busy. Veronica blinked, utterly shocked. Ethan, what's wrong with you? It's just a bracelet. I said I'm busy. Ethan roared, slamming his palm onto the desk so hard the glass water pitcher shattered. Veronica squeaked in terror, backing away, her eyes filling with tears. Ethan, you're yelling at me? For that loser Chloe. Get out, Ethan growled, his chest heaving, his eyes fixed on the handwritten notebook in his hands. Get the hell out of my office. 18 months later. London was bathed in the crisp golden light of early autumn. In the grand exhibition hall of the Victoria and Albert Museum, the international fashion elite had gathered for the highlight of London Fashion Week, the debut collection of C. Vance, the luxury couture house that had taken Europe by storm over the past year. Flashbulbs popped rhythmically against the towering white arches. Critics from Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Elle sat in the front row whispering in excited hushed tones. At the end of the runway, behind the heavy black velvet curtains, I stood, inspecting the final adjustments on my lead model's gown. I wore an emerald green silk tuxedo suit, my dark hair styled in sleek, aristocratic waves. The white bandage that had once wrapped around my head was long gone, replaced by a subtle, barely visible thin silver scar hidden near my hairline. A faint reminder of a past life that no longer held any power over me. 2 minutes to showtime, Miss Vance, the floor manager announced softly. I nodded, my voice cool and absolute. Like Q3. Roll the music. The show was a triumph. When the final model stepped off the runway to a deafening roar of applause, I walked out onto the elevated platform to take my bow. The applause swelled into a standing ovation. High society socialites, European royalty, and global investors stood up, raising their glasses to the new prodigy of haute couture. As I smiled and gave a polite nod to the crowd, my eyes casually swept across the VIP section in the second row. My gaze paused, standing near the marble pillar, completely out of place among the artistic elite of London, was a man in a dark, wrinkled suit. Ethan Hayes. He looked haggard. The arrogant, untouchable CEO who had once held his chin so high now looked hollow, his eyes sunken, his jaw covered in rough stubble. He had lost weight, his expensive suit hanging loosely on his broad frame. He was staring at me as if he had seen a ghost. Our eyes met across the glittering hall. In the past, a single glance from Ethan would have sent my heart racing, filling me with a pathetic, desperate desire to please him. Now, I looked at him the exact same way I looked at the marble pillar behind him, with total absolute neutrality. I turned around, gave the cameras one final professional smile, and stepped behind the velvet curtains. 5 minutes later, in my private green room backstage, my assistant was handing me a glass of ice sparkling water when the heavy wooden door was violently shoved open. Chloe! Ethan burst into the room. His breath was ragged, his hands shaking as he pushed past 2 security guards who were trying to restrain him. Miss Vance, should we call security? The head guard asked, reaching for his taser. I raised a single hand, signaling them to wait. I took a slow sip of my water, leaning against the edge of my vanity table. Mr. Hayes, I said, my voice smooth velvet and icy cold. You are trespassing. In a private backstage area. If this is about a corporate sponsorship, my management team handles all inquiries. Ethan flinched as if I had slapped him across the face with an iron glove. He took 3 shaky steps forward, his eyes desperately scanning my face, my hair, the subtle scar near my forehead. Chloe. His voice cracked, thick with an emotion he had never shown in his entire life. Chloe, it's me. It's Ethan. I tilted my head slightly, offering him a polite, puzzled smile, the exact same smile I had given him in the hospital ward 2 years ago. I know who you are, Mr. Hayes. You're Harper's uncle. Is she in London as well? I'd love to have tea with her. Ethan's breathing became ragged. He lunged forward, grabbing my wrists before my guards could react. His knuckles turned white. His grip was frantic, trembling, terrified. Stop it. Ethan choked out, bloodshot eyes welling with sudden hot tears. Stop acting like I'm a stranger. I know you lost your memory, Chloe. I know you forgot. But please, I beg you to remember. Look at me. He pulled my hands toward his chest, pressing them over his racing heart. Look at me, Chloe. Remember the 5 years. Remember how you used to look at me. Once you remember, you can love me again. I didn't pull my hands away immediately. I simply let them rest against his vibrating chest, feeling the frantic, panicked rhythm of his heart. I looked at his face, the bloodshot eyes, the desperate, pleading lips, the tears tracking through the stubble on his cheeks. This was the man who had treated my devotion as cheap dirt. This was the man who had let his men drag me across a cold floor to bow to his mistress. Slowly, deliberately, a soft, dry laugh escaped my lips. Ethan froze, his tear-filled eyes widening with a flicker of hope. Chloe? I pulled my hands back smoothly, stepping out of his reach. I pulled a silk handkerchief from my pocket and gently wiped my wrists where his fingers had touched my skin, as if wiping away dust. Mr. Hayes, I said, looking into his eyes with a gaze so cold it cut straight to his soul. Who told you I still have amnesia? The green room went deathly quiet. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The blood drained from his face until he was as white as a sheet. What did you say? I said, I repeated, leaning against the vanity, tossing the handkerchief into the trash bin. Who told you I didn't remember? Ethan stumbled back a step, his mind reeling, trying to process the words. You remember? You remember everything. Of course I remember, I said, my voice dripping with quiet, deadly grace. I remember the 5 years I wasted at your company. I remember the algorithmic models I built for you while you were out buying rubies for Veronica. I remember the stairs. And I remember the hospital floor. I took a step toward him, my heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. I didn't lose my memory, Ethan, I whispered, leaning in close so only he could hear. I just finally regained my sanity. Ethan looked as if he had been struck by lightning. The realization hit him with the weight of a collapsing mountain. She hadn't forgotten him because of a brain injury. She hadn't erased him because of trauma. She had looked at 5 years of her own boundless, unconditional love, looked at him, and decided he was worth nothing. No. Ethan sobbed, dropping to his knees right there on the green room carpet. The proud, untouchable titan of the Hayes group was kneeling at my feet, his forehead pressing against the hem of my emerald suit. No, Chloe, please, don't say that. Please. He reached out with trembling, filthy hands, trying to grab the edge of my trousers. I was blind. Ethan wept, his tears soaking through my shoes. Veronica tricked me. She faked her medical records. She was stealing from the firm. I threw her out. I ruined her family's firm. I did everything to pay for what I did to you. He looked up, his face contorted in utter, pathetic agony. I read the notebook, Chloe. I read the quantitative models you wrote for me 5 years ago. I realized you were the only one who ever truly cared about me. The company is falling apart without you. I am falling apart without you. I looked down at the man groveling on the floor. In my past life, if Ethan had given me a single drop of this emotion, I would have surrendered my entire world to him. I would have crawled through glass just to wipe his tears. Now, looking at him kneeling there, crying like a beaten dog, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not hatred. Just a profound, hollow boredom. Get up, Mr. Hayes, I said flatly. You're ruining my suit. Chloe, please, he screamed, his fingers digging into the carpet as I turned my back on him. Give me one chance. A month. A week. Let me prove I can love you. I don't need your love, Ethan, I said, stepping toward the door where my brother Julian was waiting with 4 armed bodyguards. I have my own. The downfall of Ethan Hayes was not a sudden explosion. It was a slow, agonizing execution that played out across the global financial news over the next 6 months. Once the Vance family pulled its remaining logistics contracts and Julian launched a hostile takeover bid against Hayes Group's primary European subsidiaries, the house of cards collapsed. Without my risk architecture models to protect his hedge funds, Ethan made a series of desperate, high-stakes trades to recover his losses. Every single one failed. Within 4 months, the board of directors removed him as CEO. Within 6 months, the Hayes Group declared bankruptcy. Veronica fared even worse. When Ethan discovered that she had been leaking confidential trade secrets to a rival firm in exchange for offshore cash, he filed a massive corporate espionage lawsuit against her. Stripped of her wealth, her reputation destroyed, and, facing a 10-year prison sentence, she was reduced to hiding in a tiny rented basement flat on the outskirts of the city. The green tea princess who had spent her life manipulating men ended up ruined by the very man she had tried to control. As for Ethan, he didn't go to prison. Fate was far crueler to him. He lost his company, his penthouse, his status, and his fortune. But he kept his memory. Every single night, in his small barren apartment in the city, he sat in the dark staring at an old faded blue notebook filled with handwritten mathematical calculations. He spent his nights reliving the memory of a girl who used to sit outside his office until 2 a.m. just to hand him a warm cup of coffee, a girl he had pushed into the dirt, a girl who would never look at him again. 1 year later, Paris Haute Couture Week. The grand courtyard of the Palais Royal was filled with the warm golden glow of a summer sunset. I stood on the marble balcony overlooking the private gardens, holding a glass of vintage champagne. Beside me stood my brother Julian, laughing as he showed me photos of Harper's graduation from her master's program in New York. She says she's flying to Paris tomorrow, Julian smiled, sipping his wine. And she threatened to steal 3 gowns from your autumn collection. She can have the whole collection. I laughed, the sound bright, clear, and utterly free. Just then, a handsome man in a tailored navy suit walked up the balcony steps, holding a sketchbook filled with raw silk samples. It was Alexander, my head business partner and the senior director of our European expansion, a man who treated me with an unwavering, profound respect that needed no dramatic declarations. Miss Vance, Alexander smiled, his dark eyes warm as he held out a hand to help me down the steps. The front row is seated. The world is waiting for your show. I looked down at the hand offered to me, steady, respectful, and safe. I smiled, placing my hand in his. As I walked toward the blinding lights of the main stage, the soft evening breeze caught the hem of my emerald gown, brushing against the faint silver scar near my hairline. I didn't look back. The past was a closed door, the ash of a long-dead fire. Ahead of me lay the runway, the applause, and a life that belonged entirely, beautifully to me.